The moment my son came into the world, I expected tears. From me, from Marcus, from everyone in the room. Instead, all I got was a cold silence that settled like frost on my skin. I looked down at my beautiful baby boy, Liam, still slick from birth, wrapped in a soft hospital blanket, and I felt something shift in the air before the words even left Marcus's mouth. He wasn't crying. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't even looking at Liam.
He was looking at me.
With the most casual voice, almost like he was commenting on the weather, he said, "We should get a DNA test. He's way too good-looking to be mine." I remember the way the nurses suddenly stopped moving. The way my mother, standing at the side of my bed, turned slowly toward him with eyes full of the same doubt she'd carried for years. Doubt she had ever been shy about when it came to Marcus. For a second, I thought maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was nerves or shock or the high-pressure moment making him say something stupid. So I laughed. Just once. One short, shaky laugh that didn't land anywhere. No one else laughed with me. Marcus didn't even blink. He just shrugged, leaned over, and ran a finger along Liam's cheek like he was examining something, not admiring, just observing. I pulled Liam a little closer to my chest, my instinct taking over before my mind could even process what was happening. I stared at Marcus, trying to find the man I married 4 years ago, but all I could see was a stranger calculating something behind his eyes. That moment should have been joy. It should have been full of tears, smiles, kisses, and first photos. But instead, it broke something. The rest of the day passed in a haze. My mother stayed unusually quiet, her disapproval practically vibrating off her. The nurses handled us kindly, but moved around Marcus like he was a splinter they didn't want to press too hard on. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear his voice, joking, yet not. Cold, yet casual. When we got home the next afternoon, Marcus seemed to switch into full proud dad mode. He carried Liam's car seat like it was the most precious thing he'd ever held. He offered to do midnight feedings, made dinner, called his mom, and even posted a photo of Liam online with a cheesy caption about fatherhood. Anyone watching would think he was the perfect new dad. But I knew better. Because sometimes, in the quiet moments, I'd catch him just staring. Not the sweet, dreamy stares parents give their newborns.
No.
This was different. Focused. Like he was looking for something, comparing features, questioning the shape of Liam's nose, or the curve of his chin. It made my stomach twist. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was just exhausted. But that tiny seed of doubt had already been planted, and Marcus's weird switch between doting father and quiet analyst only made it grow. Then, a few days later, the phone rang. It was Rachel, one of the nurses from the hospital. Her voice was pleasant at first, but I noticed a strange pause when I asked if she needed anything specific. No, just a routine check-in, she said. Just making sure everything's good at home. Everything's fine, I replied. But she didn't hang up right away. There was this breath on the other end. Not a word, just a hesitation. Then she added, "If you have any questions about anything, procedures, identification, anything at all, don't hesitate to call back." That sentence stuck with me. I replayed it over and over in my head. Procedures. Identification. I didn't know what I was even looking for, but that night, while Liam slept on my chest, I grabbed his hospital bracelet from the keepsake envelope in my nightstand and compared it to mine. The numbers were almost identical, except for the last digit. Mine ended in 8. He ended in 3. It could have been a mistake, a coincidence, a printing error. But in that moment, it felt like the missing puzzle piece I didn't even know I was searching for. I felt cold all over. My hands started shaking. I wanted to wake Marcus to ask if he noticed anything strange, but then I remembered how he looked at Liam earlier that day. Like he already suspected something. Like he knew something I didn't. And just like that, the doubt wasn't a seed anymore. It was a storm. After that night, I couldn't let it go. The bracelet number, the nurse's hesitation, Marcus's cold joke in the delivery room, it all twisted into something that wouldn't let me sleep. I found myself double-checking everything. The discharge papers, the pediatrician's note, the hospital tags, and even the wristband we left the hospital with. I was searching for something. Anything. proof that I wasn't going crazy. Marcus caught me sitting on the nursery floor one morning, surrounded by documents and folders. He leaned on the doorframe with a lazy smile. "Looking for something?" he asked, like I was being cute. I didn't look up. "Just organizing things." He walked in, crouched beside me, and gently took a page from my hand. "Soph, you need to rest. Your hormones are all over the place. You're overthinking." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him to stop minimizing what I felt, but I stayed quiet. I just nodded and folded the paper, even though inside I was unraveling. Later that afternoon, he sent me a text from the kitchen. "Booked us a DNA test. Same-day results. You're not the only one who wants peace of mind." That sentence chilled me, because I never said I wanted that.
And why did he?
When I came out to confront him, he was holding Liam, rocking him gently like any proud father would. I stared at them, trying to picture them through the eyes of a stranger. Did they look alike? Did Liam have his eyes? His chin?
It was impossible to say.
"I didn't ask for this," I told him quietly. He shrugged. "I know, but maybe it'll settle everything. For both of us." He sounded calm.
Too calm.
Almost relieved. It should have reassured me, but it didn't. Instead, it made my skin crawl. That night, while Marcus slept with his back to me and Liam snored softly in the bassinet, I opened my laptop and searched for everything I could about Marcus Caldwell. And I found almost nothing. No baby photos. No family vacation albums. No Facebook relatives posting childhood throwbacks. No public records before 2005. No middle name on any of his documents. Even his LinkedIn listed only vague job titles, without specific companies. Everything before college was a black hole. When I asked him about it the next morning, trying to be casual, he didn't even flinch. "I've told you this before," he said, slicing a banana for his cereal. "There was a fire when I was a kid. Lost everything. Photos. Documents. School records. All gone."
Right.
I remembered now. The story had come up during our second year of marriage. Back then, it had sounded tragic. Now, it just sounded convenient. I sat across from him at the table, watching as he lifted a spoon to his mouth, unfazed. "You don't even have a middle name?" I said. He chuckled. "Nope. Guess my parents weren't feeling creative." I should have stopped there, but I couldn't. "You don't talk about your parents much." He met my eyes, still chewing. "Because there's not much to say." That was the end of the conversation. Or at least, that's where he wanted it to end. We went to the clinic that afternoon. Liam was bundled in his stroller, asleep as we checked in at the reception desk. Marcus handled everything with practiced ease, answering the nurses' questions, signing the forms, even making a little joke when they asked if we wanted coffee while we waited. I couldn't stop sweating. The inside of the clinic smelled like disinfectant and printer ink. The nurse took Liam's cheek swab first, then mine. When she moved to Marcus, he didn't flinch. He leaned forward, opened his mouth, and let her swab him like he'd been preparing for this day for months. Once it was done, we were told it would take 5 days. 5 days. We left the clinic in silence. Marcus drove while I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window but seeing nothing. When we pulled into the driveway, he turned off the engine and looked over at me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, not because I was, but because I didn't trust myself to speak. He reached over and placed his hand gently over mine. "No matter what, we're going to be okay. You know that, right?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't thinking about the test anymore. I was thinking about the man beside me, the man I had a child with, the man I'd shared a home with for 4 years, and I realized I didn't know him at all. Those 5 days felt like a lifetime. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat much. I couldn't bring myself to fully engage with Liam either, and that guilt made everything worse. I kept watching Marcus out of the corner of my eye, trying to reconcile the man rocking our baby to sleep with a stranger who had no past, no roots, and no visible scars from this so-called house fire that erased his entire history. I pulled out our wedding album late one night while he was in the shower. I flipped through the pages like they might tell me something new, but all I saw were half-truths now. His smile, his suit, the way he held me. It all looked rehearsed. There were no photos of his childhood at the reception, no old family members toasting his name, just a handful of people he called old friends who never really mingled or spoke to anyone. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Now, I couldn't stop thinking about it. On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I told Marcus I had a postnatal checkup, packed Liam into his car seat, and drove straight to the hospital. Not to see my doctor, but to find Rachel, the nurse who had made that strange phone call. I found her in the hallway near the neonatal ward, holding a tablet and checking a patient list. When she saw me, her expression flickered, surprise, maybe a little discomfort. "Hi," I said, my voice too calm for how fast my heart was racing. "Do you have a minute?" She looked around, then nodded, and led me into a small consultation room. The walls were too white, and the air smelled like plastic gloves and antiseptic. "I just need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." Rachel closed the door behind us, and Saturday, of course. "When you called me a few days ago," I said, "you mentioned identification procedures. Why?" Her face tightened. "I probably shouldn't have said that." "But you did," I said, my voice firmer now. "Please. You don't have to give me full details. I just need to know what happened." There was a long pause. Then she sighed and folded her hands on the desk. "There was a glitch," she admitted. "Brief. Less than a minute. But during that time, our system showed 2 infants logged under your ID." My stomach dropped. "It was flagged," she continued, "but management dismissed it as a system error. Said it corrected itself, and since both babies were accounted for physically, they didn't investigate further. I wanted to follow up, but I was advised to let it go." "2 babies," I whispered.
Yes.
But the second record vanished from the system within seconds. It was like it was never there. I thanked her, somehow managed to stand, and walked out of the hospital in a daze. Liam slept peacefully in his car seat, unaware that his mother's world was tilting sideways. Once I got home, I dug deeper. Deeper than I had before. I searched Marcus's name again, using every tool I could think of. Newspaper archives, alumni lists, and property records. Still nothing before college. No mentions in local stories. No high school records. No relatives tagging him in old posts. Even his driver's license was issued during his college years, with no previous date listed. It was like he hadn't existed before the age of 21.
Who did that?
Who started life at 21. And who could erase everything before that. That night, Marcus asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I said I was tired. He smiled and said, "We'll get answers soon." Like he already knew what the results would say. Like he wasn't worried at all. That made it worse. The next morning, on day 4, my phone rang. It was the clinic. "Mrs. Caldwell, we need you and your husband to come in immediately," the receptionist said, her tone brisk and professional. "We have the DNA results, and the doctor would prefer to discuss them in person." My heart pounded. "Is something wrong?" I asked. "I think it's best we talk here." She hung up. We walked into the clinic in silence. Marcus, or whoever he truly was, held the door open for me like it was just another appointment. Like we were just 2 parents getting answers about a silly mix-up. My legs felt like they were made of lead as I stepped inside, gripping Liam's carrier so tightly my fingers ached. The nurse behind the counter didn't smile. She stood up the moment she saw us and asked us to wait in a private room. I looked at Marcus. He looked unbothered, maybe a little curious, but not nervous. I followed the nurse without a word. Inside the room, it was cold. The kind of cold you feel in your bones when you know something's coming and you can't stop it. Dr. Graham walked in less than a minute later. He was a tall man, mid-50s, with gray streaks at his temples and a voice that usually sounded calm and warm. But not today. "Thank you for coming in," he said, sitting across from us. His eyes didn't leave the folder in his hands. He opened it, cleared his throat, and looked up. "I'm going to be direct. The results are complicated." My chest tightened. Liam is not biologically related to Mr. Marcus Caldwell. I felt the air leave my lungs, but I didn't speak. I couldn't. Marcus didn't even flinch. He tilted his head slightly, as if he'd just been told the weather forecast was off. But more than that, Dr. Graham continued, Mr. Caldwell's DNA was flagged during the test. When run through federal databases, it triggered an alert. He paused, giving us a chance to process, though I was already frozen. There is no legal identity for Marcus Caldwell. The DNA belongs to a man named David Langston. He's a wanted fugitive. Years ago, he assumed the identity of a man named Marcus Evans, who died in a car crash. He's been living under that stolen identity since. I don't know how long I sat there staring at Dr. Graham's face, waiting for him to tell me this was some kind of mistake. But the silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt. It pressed down on me, sharp and suffocating. When I finally turned to look at the man beside me, he was already looking at me. Not shocked. Not scared. Just sad. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not guilt. Regret. Like he wished I didn't have to find out this way. Within minutes, the door opened again. 2 uniformed officers stepped into the room. I instinctively reached for Liam, who had just begun to stir in his carrier. Marcus, or David, or whoever he was, stood up slowly. He didn't resist.
He didn't speak.
As the officers read him his rights and guided his hands behind his back, he turned one last time to look at me. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. I said nothing. He was walked out the door, and I stayed rooted in that chair, holding my baby, whose little fingers curled gently against my arm. The man I married was gone. But really, he'd never existed. Our wedding, our vacations, every inside joke, every whispered promise in the dark, all of it had been a story carefully built on someone else's name. But Liam, he was real. He was mine. And in that moment, as my entire world cracked open, the only thing I knew for sure was this. My love for him had never been fake. The days that followed blurred together like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I moved through them in silence, half alive, watching the world react to a truth I hadn't even finished processing myself. News vans camped outside our house. Reporters whispered my name like it belonged to someone else. Headlines called him a master manipulator, a ghost husband, a fugitive father. But to me, he was just the man who had held my hand in the delivery room and asked for a DNA test with a smirk. I stayed inside for the first few days. I couldn't face the questions, the judgment, or the pity. The only time I left was to take Liam back to the hospital, where they confirmed, without doubt, that he was mine. The system glitch hadn't resulted in a baby swap. Despite everything, despite the nightmare unraveling around me, Liam had always been mine. I clung to that. It was my anchor. Looking back, I see now what David had done. How he'd used that moment of confusion, the bracelet discrepancy, the nurse's hesitation, to plant a seed of doubt. He leaned into the hospital's mistake, feeding it with casual comments and calculated timing. He hadn't demanded the DNA test out of concern. He had done it to buy time, to create noise around the truth, to make me question everything except him. And for a while, it worked. After the media frenzy became too much, I packed up Liam's things and moved in with my mom, Angela. She didn't ask questions. She didn't press me for details. She just opened the door, helped me unpack the diapers and bottles, and made tea while Liam napped. Her quiet support gave me space to breathe. I filed for an annulment the following week. It was simple.
Clean.
Almost insultingly easy. Since David Langston had never legally existed as Marcus Caldwell, our marriage certificate was void. No court battle. No custody hearings. Just a few documents, a firm signature, and a judge's stamp.
Gone.
Sometimes, letters still arrive addressed to Marcus. Bills. Flyers. One from a distant cousin of the real Marcus Evans, likely unaware that his relative died years ago. I don't open them. I don't even read the return address. I tear them in half and toss them without a word.
But I still think about him.
Not in the way people think about lost lovers or broken marriages, but in the way you think about a fire that destroyed your house. You remember the smell,
The heat.
the way everything crumbled before your eyes. I find myself replaying our quiet nights, feeding Liam at 3 a.m., the nursery filled with soft lullabies, Marcus snoring lightly on the couch. Were those moments real? Or were they just more of his performance? I may never know. I'll never know who he was. Not fully. Maybe not even partially. I only know the version of him that stood in my kitchen wearing pajama pants, holding a bottle, whispering nonsense to a sleepy newborn. The man who told me I was strong during labor, then asked for proof the child was his. I live with that contradiction every day. But something has changed. Something important. I know who I am now. Not just Liam's mother, but a woman who walked through betrayal, through lies, through the loss of everything she thought was real, and didn't shatter. A woman who looked heartbreak in the face and chose to keep going. Who holds her son a little tighter every night and whispers, "We're okay now." Because we are. Through pain and deception, I found something unshakable. My truth, my strength, and my son. And no one can ever take that from me.